Hello, my name is Dave Zimmerman, and welcome to the collection training program titled Collecting in Healthcare, a program to improve the collection skills of the healthcare collector. The role of the healthcare collector is more important today than ever before because of the slowdown in cash flow for healthcare providers all over the country. Faster turnaround from billing to payment has become more critical. Your performance makes a difference. The collection position is one of the most important in the financial division of your organization and can have a major impact on cash flow and public relations. Therefore, you want to be as good as possible in what you do in the area of collecting. These training programs are designed to help the healthcare collector become more successful and have been designed specifically for the collection in healthcare in terms of hospitals and clinics. The sessions have been developed to provide you with encouragement, self-motivation, direction, and a host of technical tools. The basic theme of the sections has to do with the improving your ability to collect from any source, third party or the patient. By taking this material seriously and practicing the techniques, you should see a marked improvement in your collection totals in a very short period of time. There will be a series of 5 separate sections that will deal with every aspect of healthcare collecting. Let's review those briefly. In section 1, it's titled You, the Collector. And here we spend some time analyzing your roles as collectors and how your behavior, your attitude, your self-motivation, your assertiveness, stress, and goal setting has an effect on your success. In section number 2, understanding the other person and insurance. And in this section, we'll be analyzing the other person in the collection process, the patient, the debtor, the insurance company, the attorney, with the assumption that the better we understand our opponent, the more successful we're going to become. Section 3 is titled Creative Collecting Part 1. And here we're going to cover collector organization, telephone collections, collecting from the insurance carriers, and some legal aspects that are important for you to know. Section number 4, Creative Collecting Part 2. And this section deals with motivation, motivating others to pay, overcoming objections, how to get a commitment, developing urgency, and when to stop your efforts in the collection process. And finally, section number 5 is titled In the Beginning. And this final segment of the training program zeroes in on the very early stages of the collection process, before collection and in the follow-up area in the delinquent accounts. The kind of things that you want to do to collect accounts at pre-admitting, admitting, in-house, and at discharge. Let's begin in session number 1 by looking at the role of the collector, a kind of a self-analysis and a review of the control that we exercise over our own destiny. Let's begin this session by looking at the collection process as a problem in equations. And here's how that equation might look. You plus the other person plus the situation equals collecting. And the collection equation might be solved in several ways. Let's look at those. One way to solve the equation would be to understand and change ourselves. Another way would be to understand and change the other person. And a third choice would be to understand and change the situation. Well, after some review, I'm sure you'll come to the conclusion that changing the other person and changing the situation in the collection process are not likely to happen. The answer, then, is to understand and, if necessary, change or improve ourselves. It's also important, though, to understand the other person and to understand the collection situation that we're involved in. Therefore, one of the keys to successful collecting is to understand and change, which for us means to improve, and then to understand the other person and understand the situation they're involved in. With some effort and self-discipline, you can understand yourself better in this collection process, and you can change and you can improve. Remember, you hold the key to successful collecting, not somebody else and not an outside source. And when you have a better understanding of yourself in this collection process, you will become more successful. Let's review what's involved in understanding and changing or improving ourselves in this context as we're looking at it today. For instance, understanding and changing ourselves means, number 1, to analyze our behavior in the collection process and to strive for a mature behavior in all of our collection activity. The difference is between maturity and immaturity, and you're going to be discussing this more in your sessions. The key word is maturity in behavior. The more mature we are in the collection process, the more we will gain the cooperation of the other person. And that's really what you're striving for, isn't it? To gain cooperation of the other person, whether it's a patient or the insurance company. You want their cooperation. Another way to analyze ourselves and improve ourselves is to look at the qualities and the characteristics that will make us more successful. Characteristics and qualities such as empathy, understanding, being more persuasive, having good acting ability, being a good financial counselor, being good at communication, being persistent, well organized, and then striving to perfect these qualities and characteristics in ourselves. A third way of analyzing ourselves and improving and changing is to analyze our ego, and realizing that a superior attitude and the wrong assumptions toward debtors and insurance companies can adversely affect our collections, can turn people off and destroy the buildup that we're trying to do in the collection process. And fourthly, another way of analyzing ourselves and looking for areas to change is looking at our mental attitude towards ourselves, our work, others, and the effect that it has on others. And then working toward developing a positive mental attitude, a winning attitude. Lou Holtz, the head football coach at Notre Dame, recently spoke to a group of financial managers in healthcare, and he said something I think would be of interest to you. He said that successful people have a number of things in common. I think there's a message here for us. He said they are competitive, they overcome adversity, they analyze the situation, and they set goals. So, as you begin to understand and change and improve yourself, you'll find that you're more and more able to motivate others, and motivating is the name of the game in collecting, isn't it? Motivation, persuading, selling. In fact, collection is selling, isn't it? Do you ever stop to think that you have something in common with salespeople because you're both motivators of human beings, but instead of selling a product or a service, you're promoting an idea, an action, payment for service. So one of the things we want to look at in analyzing and changing ourselves and improving is to analyze our own self-motivation. Vince Lombardi, the late and great coach of the Green Bay Packers, had his own list of self-motivators. And he listed 5 of them he thought were very important in self-motivation: mental toughness, overcoming objections, letting nothing stand in our way. He said that being mentally prepared was 75% of success. A second motivator was to control the ball. For us, that means to control the situation, to control the conversations, to be in charge. A third motivator of Vince Lombardi's was to stay in shape. For us, that's very important. We're all under a great deal of stress. Collectors have one of the most stressful jobs there is today. So it's important that we have good physical condition and stay in good physical shape. A fourth motivator was to use time wisely. Good time management will increase the number of calls that we make and make us more successful. And 5, a second effort. If we're stalled, we shift gears. We force our opponent to make good decisions. So self-motivation is extremely important. Another way of changing and analyzing ourselves and changing for improvement is to look at how assertive we are. An important characteristic in successful collecting, realizing that if we become more assertive, we'll have better results. So we want to work on becoming more assertive in the collection process. What do we mean when we say become more assertive? Well, there's a number of factors that we want to look at here, and you'll look at them more in your workbooks and your own discussions. But here are a few. Becoming more enthusiastic in our body movements, and that's important in our face-to-face contacts and interviews that we have in the collection process, but also with our voice. We can become more forceful with good eye contact in those person-to-person and face-to-face contacts that we have. Dealing with facts, the tone of our voice. Another aspect of being assertive is to be more persuasive. And how do we become more persuasive? By using words that will spell out the benefits to the other. To use positive words, assertive words, affirmative words. And then finally, controlling. Another point to make in the assertive process, and sometimes we have to point out the negative consequences in the collection process. One more point in the assertive area is to be empathetic, an important one. We want to be tuned in to the feelings and the concepts of others. And finally, in this area of change and improving ourselves, we want to see the importance of setting goals. Setting goals can be one of the secrets that can rise you to greater success. So I'm encouraging you to set goals now and keep track of how you're doing. They give you direction and motivation and will improve your collection totals. Use goal-setting ideas in your workbook and then start setting goals right now after this session today. Here's a brief summary of what we've tried to cover in this first section. Your job as a healthcare collector is extremely important. You control your own success. Your positive attitude and your mature behavior will go a long way toward predicting your success. Become more self-motivated in your work. Become more assertive in collecting. And finally, in this area of change and improving ourselves, we want to see the importance of setting goals. Section 2, Understanding the Other Person and Insurance. In this section, we're going to help the collector see that when they have a better understanding of the people that they deal with in the collection process, the more successful they will be. In this section, we'll consider the second factor in the collection equation. If you recall, it was you plus the other person plus the situation, and understanding the other person is key. In that first section, we found out that we are not constant in our reactions to others. And now we'll find out the same is true in dealing with others. They are not constant in their reactions to us either. But why? We need to understand, or at least make the attempt to. As you probably realize, collecting in the healthcare environment is different than other types of collecting. Your understanding of the other person and their situation can actually help you gain an insight as to what it's going to take to collect the account, obtain their cooperation, and higher collection totals. It'll also help you in good public relations. In understanding others in the healthcare collection process, we want to keep some basic ideas in mind. First of all, to realize that people dislike dealing with hospitals and clinics for a variety of reasons, and the effect that that has on their reaction in our request for payment. And also to realize that people are all different for a variety of reasons. Their abilities, their experiences, their education, their home life, their financial status, and therefore we need to keep in mind that all people react differently to our collection approach for different reasons. While the people we try to collect from are different for a variety of reasons, we often have the habit of putting them into a behavior stereotype. Don't we often put people into these kinds of stereotypes? The belligerent with a chip on their shoulder, insulting. The demanding, they think they are entitled to something that others aren't. The bewildered, they don't understand. The argumentative, they contradict and they doubt us. Then there's a non-talker who will not open up. We need to try to understand why they're reacting that way. And in understanding others in the collection process, we need to understand others from the standpoint of collection risks. Understanding what factors constitute a higher ability to collect. The 3 C's, for instance, that you'll be studying. Character, which is the past paying behavior. Capacity, which deals with a person's resources. And then capital, for implementing good intentions. In understanding debtors, you'll see certain clues, certain signals about the collectability of an account that you want to watch for, like debtor address, debtor occupation, marital status, age, their past paying records. However, it's important to keep in mind this. Most people will pay. Only about 3% are credit criminals. So you want to begin each attempt in your collection process with the basic assumption that you can control the account and you can collect it. Remember, your job is to separate those who can pay and will pay from those who can't and won't. And although most people will pay, it's a matter of how soon. Let's analyze that for a minute. Because in the medical profession, it's often later rather than sooner. The medical bill is at the bottom of the ladder in the debtor priority. Let's look at some of these. First of all, in the payment priority of others, there's the house, the car, utilities, the bank, credit cards, furniture, appliances, insurance premiums, and maybe there's others, and then there's a doctor in the hospital. Your job is to move it up the ladder of priority, to teach and to motivate the debtor into giving it a higher priority. We want to get it paid today, now, rather than tomorrow, this week rather than next week, this month rather than next month. A lot of people don't pay because they don't know how. You have to learn the sources of payment and be ready to suggest it, to be ready to counsel and to coach the debtor with some concrete ideas of where they can get the money to pay us. Learn and analyze the sources of payment and be prepared to give them to the patient. as you're working with them. We need not only understand the debtor better, but we need to understand the third-party payers better as well. Take the time to review the material on third-party payers in your workbooks. Get a better handle on your carriers in your area. Do an insurance company profile and a third-party analysis fact sheet. In understanding the collection process, let's look at the law of diminishing returns. The law of diminishing returns. This law takes over, as you can see by the chart, and it involves three factors. First of all, the longer the account goes without paying, the greater the chances are that the patient is taking on other obligations. Secondly, the more time that you put in on the collection of an account, the less profitable it becomes. Three, with each contact that you have to make, your chances of collecting diminish. So the better you understand the debtor and the third party, the more likely you are to gain their cooperation, and the sooner the account's going to be paid in full, before that collection cycle begins its downward trend. Let's briefly summarize this section. First of all, the better you understand those that you're collecting from, the more successful you will become. And secondly, there are many reasons why people dislike dealing with hospitals and clinics. We need to understand that. It gives us sympathy, and that's important. And the people we deal with are all different for different reasons, and it affects their payment to us, and we need to understand that. And finally, the insurance companies are changing their method of processing our bills. We need to stay well informed. Section 3, Creative Collection, Part 1. This section is devoted to helping the collector learn the basics of collection. And success in any field, as we know, comes from an individual striving for excellence in the basic, most important aspects of their profession. In collecting, knowledge of the principles of successful collecting will lead to increased totals for you. We're going to cover what it takes to build the foundation of these basic principles of successful collecting. Here are some of the basics we're going to cover in this section. Being well organized in the collection process, extremely important for you. Telephone collections, collecting from insurance carriers, and the legal aspects of healthcare collections that are important for you to know. First of all, review the material in your workbooks on being well organized in collecting. But let's today turn to the collection telephone call. Since you're going to be making most of your collections by phone, you'll want to become an expert. And here are the 8 steps to making a successful telephone call. First of all, identify the patient or the responsible party. It may seem elementary, but it eliminates contacting innocent persons, which might be grounds for legal action against you. Second, identify yourself, and then your organization, slowly, to let them know who you are. Third, ask for payment in full. Always state the balance and ask for it in full. 4, the psychological pause. Allow it to sink in, and then time for them to react, to make the promise or to make the objection. And 5, learn the objection. And you do that by asking questions. Learn the real reason for not paying. Ask questions, get the facts. And 6, find the solution and overcome the objection. 7, close and get a good commitment. Stress urgency, get a good promise, but stress urgency. And 8, confirm your agreement. Let's zero in on number 5. Learning the objection, asking questions to find out what it is that that person feels is keeping them from payment. Ask and then listen. Asking questions play a key role in collecting. They help identify objections, obtain facts, and they help the collector maintain control of the conversation. Most of the collection call, you'll find, particularly in the early stages, can be questions. We would like to review several questioning techniques covered in your material. Questions like who, what, when, where, how, to obtain the facts, and to keep control of the conversation. And asking questions that use the motivational phrases that paint the picture in their mind, that help persuade and motivate. Let's see how these techniques might be used in a collection account in self-pay.
Hello?
Hello, is this 555-3491?
Yes?
Am I speaking with Mr. Sam Harris of 225 Maple Lane?
Yeah, who's calling?
I'm Mrs. Thompson with the Community Medical Center. Our records show that we received a payment of $1,570 from Blue Cross as partial payment for your treatment over 2 months ago.
Yeah? Well, what do you want from me? You said you got paid.
Yes, but not in full. We've sent you 3 bills for the amount $370 to pay for your portion of the charges. When can you send payment in full?
Look, I've got a lot of bills. I can't worry about paying you right now.
Well, you're over 2 months delinquent in payment.
Well, listen, I've got a wife and 3 kids to support.
Are you still employed at the post office?
Yes?
And what do you do there?
Supervisor in parcel post.
Is your wife employed?
Yes, down at the Hamilton Company.
So, you're employed at the post office. Your wife is employed at the Hamilton Company. Do you have a checking or savings account?
Both. At First Federal. But so what? I can't keep up with all the bills.
What other bills do you have?
Well, I got my car, rent, phone bill, electric.
Well, that doesn't sound unusual.
Well, maybe in a couple of months I can start paying you. I'll do what I can.
Well, as I said, it's already been over 2 months since you were discharged. We need your payment in full immediately. You want to keep a good credit rating with the medical center and within the community, don't you?
Yes, but,
Well, if you give us payment in full, you can put this account out of your mind. That's really what you want, isn't it?
well,
And if you send payment now, there won't be any further trouble and expense on your account. And you don't want any additional expense, do you?
no, it's just that money's a little tight.
Well, it is for all of us. But what you really want is to get this account cleared up, isn't it?
Yes, I do. Well, I don't want to mess up my credit.
Well, if you get a check to us today, the whole thing will be straightened out. You can do that, can't you?
I suppose.
You'll feel a lot better, too, won't you?
You know, you're right.
Okay, there we had an opportunity to see how asking questions in the self-pay account controls the account, gets the facts, and uses motivational phrases. Now let's turn for a moment to collecting from insurance companies. First of all, let's look at a couple of simple steps. Number 1, start the follow-up early, at least at 30 days or less on larger balances. 2, it's better to phone than go to the letter. It's better, it's faster, it's a better response. Save the tracers and the letters for the small balance accounts. 3, be well prepared for that contact. Know the details and stay on the phone until you get a commitment. And then it's tight follow-up from there on in on that account and stressing urgency. And 4, handle the delays and the put-offs from the carriers. Don't settle for pending. Know exactly the reason for the delay. Ask questions and get the facts here, too. Do what you have to do to keep that account moving toward payment. And 5, get the patient and the employer involved if necessary. And now, let's watch and see how some of the principles we've discussed work in the insurance accounts.
Yes, thank you. We billed your company more than 40 days ago. The balance from Unified Insurance is $3,475. Could you tell me what's causing the delay?
I have the information here. The claim is pending.
Pending? I'm sorry, I don't understand.
It's under investigation.
Why are you investigating?
We review all accounts over $3,000.
Have you begun the investigation?
No, it's scheduled soon.
When will the investigation be complete? We don't hold accounts from insurance companies for more than 50 days. At that point, we could find it necessary to contact the patient or his employer for payment.
I can't give you a specific date.
We've had a number of similar delays in our dealings with your company. We're considering notifying the insurance commissioner.
I'll see what I can do. Maybe I can give this claim priority. We will need more medical record information.
Will it be helpful if we send you a copy of the complete file?
Oh, yes.
You'll have it on your desk tomorrow. When will the account be processed and paid?
It's impossible for me to say.
Who in your company could tell me?
Well, our claims supervisor might have more information, but I can get back to you.
When will I hear from you?
I can get back to you tomorrow afternoon.
Fine. Could you give me the name of your supervisor in case you're unable to call for some reason?
Well, there we had an opportunity to see how that same principle of asking questions works in the collection of the insurance account. Ask and listen. Listen carefully to everything the other person says. It gets you closer to what it will take to get the account collected. Get all of the facts that you need to close that account. Practice asking questions in the collection call and stay in control of the conversation, as well as leading the person to a good, firm commitment to pay. Let's briefly summarize this section. Successful collectors are well organized in their collection follow-up. You should master the 8 steps of successful phone collection. Learn the art of asking questions. It will increase your collection totals. The keys to effective insurance collection is to start early and learn to handle the delays and the put-offs that they will give you. Section 4, Creative Collection, Part 2. In this section, we want to continue to review and perfect the basics. But first, let me say that we're going to get a bit more sophisticated in our collection process now. We'll be learning the techniques that will motivate others to pay. You know, people are thinking, I would pay if only they would give me a reason for paying. Our job, give them that reason. A reason for paying our bill now, today, or as soon as possible. We want to give them a reason for making a decision, to take an action, to move along the direction that will get our account paid as quickly as possible. To do this, we need to learn and then practice the things that will motivate or the things that will give them a reason to pay. Keep in mind that people do things when they're motivated or when they feel there's a good reason for taking an action, to making a decision. Our job as collectors, provide that motivation or reason. And we do this with a variety of techniques. But first, let's review quickly why people do pay. People pay their bills generally because of 3 basic factors, and they are because of pride, honesty, and fear. Pride, honesty, and fear. Any reason that you can come up with as to why people do pay can be slotted into one of these 3 areas: pride, honesty, and fear. Now, if that's true, then these become the motivational building blocks. To get others to pay, if this is why people do pay, then we want to build on it, to use it, to capitalize on it, to construct motivational phrases and words and impressions and images, all designed to motivate and to give a reason for paying through one of these 3: pride, honesty, and fear. Let's look at these basic building blocks closer, why people do pay, to give you some ideas that you can use in motivating others to pay. Let's take because of pride and the appeal of pride, and this deals with their self-respect, pride in their reputation, pride in their ability to earn and provide for their family, to provide for other members that may be living with them, to pay their bills or to stay current with their financial obligations. Honesty. This deals with their doing what they believe or feel is right, to be fair, to be a person who meets their obligations and commitments in an honest, fair way. And finally, fear. This is in terms of what anyone may be afraid of: loss of reputation, loss of future credit, the loss of wages, fear of embarrassment, the fear of loss of future services at your organization. Let's look at how some of the motivational techniques covered in your material might be used in the collection process built around the appeal of pride, honesty, and fear.
Can we review this information?
Sure.
Fine. Mr. Thompson, we show that your wife was discharged from the hospital 1 month ago.
Well, we're separated now.
Yes, but the admission and financial forms were signed by you.
Yeah.
Well, our records show that you've received 2 statements.
Yeah, I got them. But it's hard to pay now. I have a lot of bills, and I'm behind on them.
Well, are you still employed as a salesman?
Yeah, and business is slow.
Yes, but you have to understand our position. We need payment in full, and we can't let your account run unpaid any longer. You have a good payment record. You've always had a good reputation in the community, and a good reputation like yours takes years to build up. You don't want to risk it on an unpaid bill, do you?
Well, no. It's just that since my wife was the patient, and we're separated, well,
But you did sign the forms. You're responsible. I'd be very surprised to find that you let your account go overdue. I know this bill must have been overlooked. You still have good credit, and that's something to be proud of. I know you'll want to keep it that way.
Yeah, my credit has always been good.
Of course. So I suggest that you send us payment in full. Your balance is now at $463, and you indicated at discharge that you would pay within 10 days. 10 days is long past, Mr. Thompson. But as I say, I'm sure it was just an oversight. Let's just say that I'm reminding you of your obligation. I know you're the kind of person who wants to be well thought of in the community. I know I can rely on you to send us payment in full as soon as possible.
Yeah, well, I guess I'll do what I can.
Fine. Now, when can we expect a check?
Now let's look at an example of how we use the appeal to honesty in the collection process.
Am I speaking with Irene Jackson of 1452 Oak Street, Apartment B?
Yes, who is this?
This is Mr. Davis with Community Hospital.
It's about that bill, isn't it?
Well, Mrs. Jackson, our records show you have a balance of $175 currently due Community Hospital.
I know.
Is there a reason you've been unable to pay this account in full?
You don't know what I've been through this past year. First, there was the divorce. Then I got laid off. I have 2 kids. I have so many bills I don't know what to do first. Then I had to take the baby to the emergency room. It just never seems to stop. One thing after another. You know, I had to drop the insurance. The premiums were so high.
Yes, but I know you want to do the right thing.
Sure I do.
I know how hard things can be, and believe me, you'll feel a lot better when you get this off your conscience.
I wish I could.
You're an honest woman. I'm sure you wouldn't want to shortchange the hospital. You really should pay this account.
You know, money doesn't grow on trees.
I understand, and I hope you understand how important a good credit rating is, especially for a woman in your situation. It's important that the people you deal with know how honest you are.
I try to do the right thing. Listen, could I make payments? I could probably pay maybe $10 a month. Would that be all right?
You see, Mrs. Jackson, your account is already overdue. To save your credit rating, the best thing to do will be to pay in full as soon as possible. You owe it to your children to maintain a clean credit rating.
I suppose I do. Couldn't I make payments?
The balance in full is due now. You really shouldn't delay.
And finally, let's look at how we might use fear as an appeal in the collection process.
It's nice to see you, Mrs. Franklin.
I wanted my husband to come with me, but he couldn't. He works 2 jobs, you know.
What does he do?
He drives a cab during the day, and at night he does janitor work.
Sounds like a very busy man.
He sure is. Believe me, I'm busy too. We have 5 children. That takes up a lot of my time, and with 5 kids, you can imagine how fast the money goes.
Well, let's take a look now. Our records show your account balance is $673. Our problem is that the account is now past 60 days old, and we find that your insurance was denied due to a pre-existing condition.
I don't know how these doctors and insurance people expect a person to live. My husband has to work 2 jobs just to keep food in our mouths. Food and rent and car and babysitter.
Babysitter?
For when I have to leave the house, I can't be expected to stay inside all the time, can I?
Well, of course not. But do you spend a lot of money on sitters?
Sure, since I took a job.
Oh, so you and your husband are both employed then?
We have to be.
Mrs. Franklin, we've reviewed your case, and since the account is well past due, we have to ask you for the balance in full. We cannot hold this account any longer, and I was wondering when the hospital could expect a check.
For all of it?
For the entire balance.
I just can't pay all of it right now. Could you take half now and keep the rest on account?
We need the balance in full now.
If you won't take half, you won't get any of it. We just can't pay it right now.
When I spoke with you before, we talked about a checking account balance.
That doesn't matter. We need that money.
Would you like us to contact your employer or your husband's employer to see if they might help?
No, I wouldn't.
Well, then will you agree to pay today?
I told you I can't.
Mrs. Franklin, remember, with a family your size, you may need the hospital services again. You'll want care without embarrassing questions that could slow down admission.
Yes, but
When can we expect payment then?
I don't know.
Your credit might suffer as a result of this. Think how that might affect your chances of buying on time payments. You owe it to your family to maintain good credit.
I don't know.
Perhaps you'd rather talk with our attorney then.
Although we go through the question process and we use motivational phrases, we still get reasons why they won't pay it. Reasons they won't make a decision. There's put-offs, delays, and objections. You know you're going to get some objections to paying, delays, and put-offs. Knowing how to handle or get around or solve or remove the objection and keep on collecting the account is a skill that can be learned. Now, here are some examples of how to overcome objections covered in your material. Watch how they handle the objection and then go on to collecting.
Mrs. Stevens, we show you have a balance of $595 due Community Hospital.
Yes, I've been getting bills.
Are both you and your husband still employed?
Yes.
It appears that you made no arrangements for payment at the time of your discharge. Didn't you see the hospital's cashier?
We were in a hurry.
Perhaps we can make arrangements now.
I think you should take this up with our insurance. They should be paying more.
The $595 balance is the deductible. It is in your contract.
I can't believe this. We bought the insurance in the first place to take care of problems like this.
Did you say you felt insurance should pay more even though you have a deductible?
I think so.
You're right to be concerned, but the policy clearly spells out your deductible. I'm afraid you are liable for payment.
Well, we weren't too pleased with the service we got in the hospital. That should count for something.
You weren't pleased with the service? What specifically?
I hardly saw my doctor the whole time I was there.
I can see why you might feel that way, but don't you think it is something you should take up with your doctor?
I guess so. But when I did see my doctor, he kept telling me not to worry about the hospital bill.
Your doctor told you not to worry about the hospital bill?
That's right.
I can see why your doctor might have told you this just before surgery. I've heard doctors say that myself. Sometimes they'll suggest you don't worry about your bill because worrying could have an adverse effect on your health. He did this for your sake. I'm sure he didn't mean that there would be no charge for services.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's make arrangements for payment.
Now here's another type of account. It's an insurance account. Still getting objections. Let's see how the collector handles the objection in the insurance situation.
Are you aware that this account is past due?
Well, the case has been in our files, awaiting further review. There are a few points that will require investigation.
Did you say you're making a review of the claim?
That's correct.
Well, I can see your point of view. Of course you want to be certain that you're paying a legitimate claim, but we've been doing business together for many years now, and the hospital's record is above questioning. In this case, the account is past due, and we require payment in full immediately.
Regardless, we'll have to continue checking for coordination of benefits.
Did you say you were checking for coordination of benefits?
Yes.
I can understand why you would want to be sure that there's no other coverage, but it seems that since the account is overdue, you might speed the process along. When do you think we might receive payment?
Well, I'll see what I can do. You know, we still have your charges to consider.
You want to consider our charges. All right, you're right to be concerned about the charges, but as I say, the hospital's record speaks for itself. I assure you that the charges are legitimate and well documented. You must try to understand our position. We can't hold accounts for more than 50 days. And as I pointed out, the account is past due. When can we expect to receive payment?
Motivating and overcoming objections will lead you to the final phase of the collection. Closing the call and getting a commitment. A commitment to that next step, or paying in full. A definite action, that next step. A commitment to something that leads to payment in full. Let's look at some ways to get a commitment with a good close in the collection process.
Mr. Hill, we show that you have a balance of $275 due Community Hospital. It's been 90 days since your treatment, and we need payment in full as soon as possible.
I think we've got a little problem there.
And what's that, Mr. Hill?
We have an awful lot of bills to pay, and to tell you the truth, yours is at the bottom of the pile.
Yes, but your account is long overdue.
Look, if I have to pick between paying my electric bill and paying you, I have to pay the electric. I can't let the family go without lights and heat. Then there's the rent, the car, and the furniture payment. Why, I'm up to my ears in bills.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Hill, but we can't hold this account any longer. When can we expect payment in full?
How much is the bill again?
$275.
How much time will you give me?
Well, that's the problem, Mr. Hill. We really can't give you much more time.
Well, can I finance it? I mean, can I make payments?
The best thing will be for you to pay in full. Now, can you give me a specific date we can expect payment? Any time between now and 10 business days from now will be acceptable.
I don't know.
You'll want to protect your credit and clear up the account this month. You don't want us to take further action, do you?
No, I don't want that kind of trouble.
When can we expect payment in full, then?
I don't know, I get paid Wednesday, okay? Maybe I can give you something, Thursday.
Will you be paying by check or in cash?
Cash.
Fine. We'll expect payment in full, in cash, to be made on Thursday. Agreed?
Sure.
That's one example of getting a good commitment with a good close. Let's look at another example of getting a commitment with a good close.
I appreciate your taking the time to come in to talk this over with us, Mrs. James.
Well, when I got your last letter, I thought I'd better explain why we haven't paid.
I'm glad you did. You know, the account is over 30 days past due.
You see, we haven't gotten much money right now, but we'll be able to pay everything at tax time. We should be getting a pretty good-sized refund.
I can understand your wanting to put it off until you receive your tax refund, but that's at least 4 months away. I'm afraid the hospital can't wait 4 months.
But it would be so hard to pay now. $375 is a lot to us.
I know it seems like a lot, but when you consider the bigger picture, for example, you have a good credit rating in town. If you pay the hospital in full, your credit will stay intact. You know how if you fail to pay one bill that your credit rating can suffer. You don't want that, do you?
Of course not.
Now, I know how a bill like this can bother you. Once you pay it, you won't have to worry about it again. Doesn't that sound good?
I would like to forget about this bill, but
You have a good credit rating with the hospital. And remember, the hospital didn't wait when you needed care. We took care of you at once. Don't you think it's fair to pay the hospital as soon as you can?
I don't see how much difference it will make if we can pay the hospital at tax time.
But it will make a difference. If you can't pay us soon, we'll have to refer the account to a collection agency. They'll report you to the credit bureau. Then they'll take more serious collection measures. And that could prove costly and embarrassing for you. That's not what you want, is it?
I don't think so.
Of course not. Now, would it be easier for you to pay this account next payday or at the end of the month?
Maybe the end of the month.
Fine. Will you be paying by check or in cash?
Check, I guess.
Very good. You know, you'll feel a lot better after the bill is paid. Now, we'll be expecting a check for payment in full at the end of the month. Agreed?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mrs. James. We'll be sending you a note to confirm that you agree to pay the account in full by the end of the month.
So there you have it. Motivational techniques, overcoming objections, and getting commitments with a good close. Review this material often and practice these techniques in your collection. And then watch your collection totals climb. Let's briefly summarize this section. People pay for a reason. Good reason and motivators have to do with pride, honesty, and fear. You should master the use of motivation in collecting. You can overcome objections to payment and gain a sound commitment. Know how to stress the urgency in payment and know when to stop your efforts internally on the collection of an account. Section 5, in the beginning. This final segment of our training has been developed to point out the importance of all the factors in your organization that have an impact on collection, but prior to the collection follow-up of the accounts. There are certain parts of the job for employees in admitting and in the business office that can affect collection before the collector ever sees an account. In fact, if certain things are done well by the employees in admitting and in the business office, the collector may never see the account because it will not become delinquent. Or if it does, but certain things are done well in these departments, the collector's chances of collecting the account will be that much better. There are 5 control points in any healthcare organization. Let's review them. Number one, before admission or before the service is rendered, let's call it pre-admission, we have to ask ourselves what steps we take to effect collection later on in this area. Secondly, at admission, during that very important interview spot where real information is obtained and the discussion is made regarding payment. Third, what goes on while the patient's in the house, in the hospital, seeing the patient or the family while service is still being rendered. 4, at discharge, the last stop before going home, maybe the last face-to-face conversation before the account becomes delinquent. And then 5, after discharge, the collection follow-up. 5 control points. And in this section, we're looking at the first 4 as an important aspect that is often overlooked in these control points, and that is the psychological advantage in the collection process. Note that the psychological advantage you have in collecting during the pre-admission period and how that advantage almost totally deteriorates by a month after discharge, about the time that a collector starts to follow up on an account. The psychological advantage, very strong, one you should pay a lot of attention to in developing control points in your organization. Therefore, you want to practice good collection techniques in the very beginning where you have a high psychological advantage, right on through the discharge procedures where that advantage remains high. Now, practicing good collection technique in the pre-admission, admitting, in-house, or discharge areas is considerably different than the follow-up process. But note that some of the same collection concepts that we used in the follow-up area can be used in these early stages. Such things as good organization, recognizing the 3 C's of collection, asking questions, using motivational phrases, overcoming objections, and getting a commitment. All of these principles we applied in the collection follow-up can be applied in the early stages. Let's see how some of these techniques can be applied in the control point of admitting.
I see that a series of tests are indicated for you, Mr. Wilson. Now, we're able to make a rough estimate of the costs involved, and the total bill for services should run between $1,500 and $2,000. From your previous visit to the hospital, we know your insurance deductible. Your portion of the bill should be about $700.
Mm-hmm.
Our records show that you were hospitalized over 5 months ago for a period of several days.
Right. That was when I broke my foot. I was playing softball and I tried to slide into second base.
We show a $600 balance still outstanding on that account. May I ask a few questions?
Sure.
Are you still employed by Ferguson Lumber?
Yes.
What is your position there?
Day foreman.
May I ask your income?
I make $11 an hour. With bonuses, I make about $25,000.
Is your wife still employed by Power Company?
Yes.
And what is her income?
She makes about $14,000.
Does she carry insurance?
No.
And your children?
None.
Good. May I ask where you bank?
First Federal.
Savings or checking?
Both.
And what do you think is the balance combining both accounts?
Hard to say. A few hundred, maybe.
Mr. Wilson, let's talk about your previous balance with the hospital. Now, wouldn't it be great to get that account off your mind?
Sure, if I could.
You know, you've always had a great reputation in town. You don't want to risk it on an unpaid bill, do you?
But a good reputation doesn't put food on the table.
I'm sure you want to do the honest thing.
Yeah, I try to be honest.
You know, you may need the hospital services again sometime.
I hope not.
Nobody wants to need the hospital services, but sometimes we can't help it. Would you like me to contact your employer or your wife's employer? Maybe they could help me with the old account.
No, I don't want to do that. Let's try to work it out here.
Don't worry, Mr. Wilson. Based on the information you've given me, I'm sure we can make a satisfactory arrangement.
Now let's focus at that important control point of discharge, focusing in on the position of the cashier, the person who talks to the patient at the completion of service and has to collect the patient's portion of the bill. Let's see how asking questions, using motivational appeals, and gaining a commitment can be accomplished in this area.
How are you feeling, Mr. O'Brien?
Much better. I'm happy to be leaving the hospital.
It was hard enough getting him admitted.
What was the problem?
I don't know, but they kept me waiting more than 3 hours.
And his back was killing him.
I can see why you're happy to be going home. Let's take care of this and you'll be on your way. Your balance is $575. Will you be paying by check or in cash?
$575?
Wait a minute. We have a $350 deductible.
Plus 20% of the first $1,000.
I didn't know. We weren't expecting this. And no one said anything about this when they were admitting me.
We can't. We owe on our mortgage. Then there's the car payment. We owe on our charge cards. And on top of everything, we have to pay the doctor, too.
That's right, this is crazy.
What are we going to do?
We're not gonna pay this, that's all. I can't take any more of this.
Mr. and Mrs. O'Brien, obviously you're upset. Will you explain what we can do to make things easier?
You can get me my job back. I was laid off.
How long have you been out of work?
Almost 6 weeks.
Is Mrs. O'Brien still employed?
Yes?
But I'm working part-time. We can't live on that.
Do you have any savings?
Not much. We've been living on it.
You want to keep a good credit rating here in the hospital and in the community, don't you?
Oh, we're almost broke.
Well, if you wait to pay on this account, there could be more trouble and expense. You don't want that, do you?
No.
Mr. O'Brien, when do you think you'll be returning to work?
I don't know. Maybe Monday.
Won't things be a little easier then?
Sure, but we can't pay $575 all at once.
I know it sounds like a lot of money in your present situation, but won't it be great to get this account off your mind?
We just can't pay $575 all at once.
How much could you afford per month once you're back to work?
30, maybe $40 a month.
All right. Now, if we can make arrangements that will allow you to make monthly payments that you can afford, say $40 per month, will you agree to the terms?
I guess so.
Fine. I'll draw up an agreement that will call for payments of $40 per month until the balance is paid. Agreed?
Now let's assume the cashier could not collect the current amount due, for one reason or another. Let's see how our interview by the financial counselor might go. Again, using the techniques of asking questions, using motivational phrases, and gaining a commitment to pay.
Mr. Smith, you were referred to me because you indicated that you might have some difficulty in paying the balance of your account. Would you like to tell me a little bit about yourself before we begin?
What do you want to know? I already told the cashier I couldn't pay the bill.
Well, for starters, what is your age?
I'm 23.
Married?
Yes.
Are you employed?
Yes. I work for Ace Printing Company.
Good-sized company, aren't they?
Biggest in town.
About how much do you make in a year?
Just got a raise. I'll be making about $19,000 a year.
Is your wife employed?
No, she takes care of the baby.
Your total bill is $5,000, Mr. Smith. Your insurance company will pay $4,000 of it, and your portion of the balance is $1,000. Why would there be a problem in paying the hospital in full?
Well, I didn't know the bill would be so high. I just can't afford it, that's all.
You didn't know how much the bill would be?
Well, they told me what the total would be when they admitted my little girl for her foot surgery, but I thought the insurance was going to pay for it.
Did you know the terms of your insurance policy?
Nobody told me about it. I guess it's the same insurance they give everybody where I work.
Why will it be so hard to pay the bill now?
We have rent to pay every month, and we have car payments. Now we find out our little girl is going to need more surgery. $1,000 is just too much.
Do you have a bank account?
Yes, we have a savings account.
You know your current balance?
About $1,500, but we're saving that money for down payment on a house.
I can understand why you might want to save that money for a house, but in the long run, it will be a lot better for you to take care of this account. You're young, and you'll have your house before you know it.
They never told me about that deductible. I'm not going to pay it till I have some time to work it out. I want to talk to my boss about that insurance, and if you think I'm going to touch that house money, you've got another thing coming.
Please don't be upset, Mr. Smith. Clearly, you have some money in your savings that would take care of the account. Don't you think it will be worth the wait for the house to pay this off?
We can't wait. We're going to need the extra space. We're expecting another baby.
You're right to be concerned about your family's future, Mr. Smith. And perhaps you should consider your credit rating, too. Your family is young, and you'll need a good credit rating to get started. Especially if you're going to buy a house, don't you think?
Yeah, well, I guess so.
And you have your reputation to think about. After all, the hospital provided you with our best service when you needed it. I'm sure you'll want to do the fair thing and make arrangements, won't you?
Jeez, I don't know.
I know it's difficult now, but think ahead. Think of your wife. She'll be having her baby soon, and you won't want any difficulty when she comes back to the hospital, will you?
No.
Let's try to work something out. You don't have to pay it all at once. We know how you feel. But if you take small amounts from your savings every month, it will seem a lot easier, won't it?
Yeah.
What do you think you could afford a month?
I don't know, I guess, it could be $50 or so.
If you think you could possibly afford $75 per month, I think we can make things even easier for you in the long run.
How's that?
Well, the additional $25 per month would work as advance payment for your upcoming maternity expenses. It will be a good head start, don't you think?
Yeah, I guess so.
Excellent. We'll work up an agreement now where you'll pay $50 per month toward the current charges and $25 per month as advance payment for the new charges. Does that sound all right?
Yes.
Thank you. You know it's for the best, don't you?
Yeah.
Your total monthly payments will be $75. Here, I'll give you a copy of the agreement now.
Remember, whether you're attempting to collect through the mail, the telephone, or the interview, the goal is still the same: to get the payment in full, or the next best possible arrangement. Let's review the major points of this section. There are 5 major collection control points, and 4 of them take place before the collection follow-up. Before admission, at admission, in-house, at discharge, and then finally the collection follow-up. The collection psychological advantage is 100% at pre-admission, and then it falls off at each one of the control points until the patient has the advantage over the collector. Strive for good collection control over the first 4 points. Many of the collection follow-up techniques work in the 4 control points prior to the follow-up conclusion. This concludes our collection training session. Here's a fast summary of the major points we've covered. We can zero in on about 3 major themes. First of all, because your role has become so important, maximize your full potential by striving to improve. Remember these basic points in understanding yourself in the collection role. First of all, strive for that mature behavior. Remember the difference between mature and immature and the effect that it has on those that you're collecting from. Develop the qualities of a successful collector. Watch your ego and don't let it get in the way of getting cooperation. Try to maintain a positive mental attitude at all times. Become more self-motivated. Become a self-starter. Strive to be more assertive and practice those assertive techniques. Always dress the part of a person in authority. Set collection goals and track your results. Second major theme, always make the effort to understand the people that you're collecting from, self-pay or insurance. Analyze and put yourself in their shoes. The more you know and understand them, the more successful you'll become. And finally, learn and practice the basic techniques of successful collecting. For instance, become well organized in your follow-up. Make better use of your time. Practice the use of asking questions in the collection process. Learn to overcome objections. Constantly practice the use of motivational phrases. Give them a reason for paying. Always get good commitments, good promises. Practice good closing techniques. And always stress urgency in payment. In short, become the best you can be. Good luck to you.